We expect writers to work completely alone. One person, one notebook, one laptop. Somehow we've come to believe that if you're going to write a great story, you need discipline, creativity, and nothing and nobody else. But I think we've confused two very different ideas. Writing alone and writing in isolation. Those aren't the same thing, and mixing them up is making writing much harder than it needs to be. Let's take a deep breath. You've made it to the Writing Woods. Here we are never alone. We're in this beautiful community full of writers who are passionate about the stories they're telling. If you haven't yet, join us at writingwoods.com. We're supporting each other, talking about our projects, and soon we'll have live writing sessions happening in camp. We have this romantic image of the isolated writer, someone who's a solitary genius, the suffering, starving artist, who lives alone in the middle of nowhere and just writes all day. And as wonderful as that may sound, that's not the whole picture. But it is the image that comes to mind a lot of the time when we think about great storytellers. And the question that I would stop to ask is not whether this image is real or correct, but is it serving us? Is the image of the writer scribbling away alone helping us tell our own stories? Because y'all, we don't expect athletes to train alone. We understand that great musicians have teachers. And if asked, we would say that a lot of professionals and artists benefit from collaboration. So is the same true of writers? Or is writing different? Does it require solitude? Writing is most often physically done alone. The quiet and solitude can make it easier to focus and to get into a story. Y'all, I live out in the sticks. I spend my free time in the woods. I do enjoy solitude. Some of my best writing days are spent completely alone, no worrying about distractions or the outside world. I don't want somebody looking over my shoulder as I draft, and nobody can write your story for you. The act of writing is, at its core, a solitary activity. But sometimes we take that a step farther, and that's how we wind up with this image of the isolated writer living out in the middle of nowhere scribbling in their notebook. We assume that if the act of writing is solitary, then a writer must live a solitary life, because anything else would be a distraction. It's a romantic image, and it seeps into our view of ourselves as writers. We compare ourselves to that image and hold it up as the ideal. We start believing things like if we need accountability, then that means we're not disciplined enough. If we ask for feedback too early, then people will think we're a bad writer. We put off joining writing communities until after our draft is better, after we're published. Once we're a little farther along, we begin to treat community as a reward we have to earn instead of a resource that helps us grow. We cling to that image of the solitary writer and start seeing it as a job description. And perhaps when we define the writing process as the act of writing, of putting words onto the page, we can justify this. But I would ask, what constitutes the writing process? Yes, it is putting words down, but it's also thinking, brainstorming, outlining, revising. It's having ideas as you experience the world and listen to people's stories, using your own feelings as fodder. The writing process is far more than just the simple act of writing words. And some parts of that process benefit from community and collaboration. And those are the parts of the process that just don't work with that image of the solitary, isolated writer. And that's why trying to take the idea that writers work alone and stretch it into this belief that writers need to be alone simply doesn't work. Because writing asks a lot of us. It asks us to believe an idea that no one else can see, to keep going after the excitement wears off, to solve problem after problem, to trust our own judgment. That's a lot to carry, and when we try to carry it alone, we lose out on things that could make the process so much easier. Sometimes it's accountability. Somebody just noticing when you disappear. Sometimes it's perspective. Hearing another person's point of view to help you see your own story differently. It may just be encouragement, you not being alone with your doubts. Community doesn't remove the challenges associated with writing. Your support system doesn't write your book for you, but they help you carry some of the weight so that it's not all pressed on your shoulders. So what does this look like if writers aren't meant to be completely isolated? But we know that some solitude is a good thing for productivity and for just really getting into the story. Let's think about office spaces for a second. There are two different schools of thought. Put workers in a closed office space. Each one has their own little room, their own little box, so they can concentrate without distractions. Or have an open floor plan where everybody's working together for maximum collaboration and exchange of ideas. There are downsides to both. One of my favorite ideas about this is discussed in Cal Newport's Deep Work. He talks about the hub and spoke style system. Imagine a building where everybody has their own private soundproof office. You can close yourself off and focus on your work with nothing bothering you. But each of these offices is connected by a hallway to a central common area. So when you want, you can venture to a more public setting where you can exchange ideas and collaborate with other folks. Ideally, people who are working on different types of projects than you are, to get some perspective and ideas from people who think differently. And you can carry those things back to your little cave, to your solitude, and use them in what you create. This principle for designing an office building could also be applied to designing a writing life. Sometimes you write in solitude, but then you venture out into the community writing space where you share ideas, gather perspective, exchange accountability, and have group writing sessions that make you feel motivated. Instead of forcing yourself to live in that quiet office, keep it as a place you can go, but also allow yourself access to the world and to other writers. Writing can be solitary, but being a writer doesn't have to be. So what does that hub part of your writing life look like? It could be as simple as a critique partner, a small writing group with weekly check-ins, an accountability partner to text and make sure you're keeping up on your writing sessions, or occasional group writing sessions in person or online. Some people want or need more community than others, and our needs for this kind of support can change during our life, during our projects. But remember that the community around you is in your control. You have the community you create. If you want this hub, this community of creatives and writers, go find them. Join a local writers group, check Meetup for in-person sessions, attend writing retreats and events, join online communities and forums, and actually stay in touch with the people you meet. Follow up. Be that person who suggests a group chat, a Discord. Organize regular writing sessions. And if you're not going to be that person, look for spaces that are a little more organized with somebody who's going to do that for you. If you're a member of the Writing Woods, camp is a perfect example of that. I'll link the wait list to that down below. Because while it's nice to interact with other writers and creatives, the real juice comes from having that long-term relationship. People who know you, who are willing to be honest with you, people you have that certain level of comfort around. And we start to get that exchange of ideas and energy that is so motivating and inspiring. And when we go too long working without that, it starts to feel like a slog. And we think there must be something wrong with us, because writers are supposed to work alone, because we've seen that image all our lives of the solitary writer working in isolation, and we think we should be able to do that. But humans evolved in groups. Community helps us create better, recover from discouragement faster, and persist in the long term. Not because we're weak, because we're humans. That's how we're built. Yes, we want to be disciplined. And we don't want to wait for someone else to give us permission to do the things we're passionate about. But the goal isn't to become so disciplined that you never need anyone, because we do need a support system. And somewhere along the way, many of us started treating that like a character flaw. We admire independence and self-sufficiency. Those are wonderful qualities. But sometimes strength isn't refusing help. Sometimes it's allowing yourself to be supported. And that image of the solitary writer, maybe it's not something we should aspire to, because we can write alone, we can survive alone, but we want to do more than just survive. We want to create, and we want to find joy in storytelling. For many of us, that's easier to do when we have a community to lean on when it's hard, to celebrate when the words are flowing, and to exchange ideas and energy. So remember, you're not weak for needing people in your corner. Find your community, build your community, and then foster it as something that's as important as your writing practice, because it's part of it.